Well, that in particular to hear about is exciting because one of the comments that I've frequently had from a number of people on the discussions on the Facebook page is folks have said, there are lots of studies about people who are a particular type of meditator, but we haven't really seen, and maybe there have been, and I just haven't run across them yet, studies of what's happening in the brain when we're doing this type of meditation, experienced meditators of that type, versus another kind of meditation. Because what we've been describing is very much in the classic sense, a jhana, a samatha kind of meditation, as opposed to a very active mind, mindfulness kind of meditation. The effects that you're describing are ones that are very much people who are long-term meditators are very familiar with. I also find it interesting that this is particularly well-timed. We're recording this at the moment when I've just published episode 65, which is an interview with Richie Davidson of the Center for Investigating Healthy Minds. So to hear that there is collaboration in the works is wonderful to hear, and my hope personally for that upcoming study is that it's not limited to one area, that the rest of us in other parts of the country could maybe participate in it. But I know that's a challenge.
Yeah, and we haven't made that determination yet whether we will try to recruit simply locally or whether we'll go nationally. We may need to go nationally to get the kinds of people that we want into the study.
Now, Roland, you also mentioned another study that you're looking for people to participate in having to do with cancer. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to, Ted. Actually, we have there are a couple therapeutic targets that bring themselves forward as potential applications for psilocybin or related compounds. And one is cancer, one is the addictions, and I'll tell you about both. The cancer study is the furthest along. Again, pulling on research done back in the 1960s, there was some interest that experiences of the type that I'm describing, the meaningful spiritual experiences, would be of therapeutic benefit to individuals who were struggling with anxiety or depression secondary to their cancer diagnosis. This is essentially the existential crisis of facing one's personal demise. And so very recently, Charlie Grove at UCLA has published a pilot study with psilocybin in 12 cancer patients. Our group at Johns Hopkins and a group at NYU have ongoing studies. We're looking at higher doses of psilocybin than Charlie Grove gave, and although the study is blinded, we've run about 20 volunteers to date, but we have to recruit in 44. But our study's been open for over 3 years, so enrollment has been incredibly slow. And you've mentioned that you're a cancer survivor, so you can probably empathize and have insight into this. There are a couple of reasons for this. One is the oncology community is so focused on cure and so not knowledgeable about something like psilocybin that they've been reluctant to refer into this protocol. And secondly, with great sympathy and empathy for the cancer patients, they have been put through a lot. And the last thing in the world they're looking for is the opportunity to do another clinical trial and come in for evaluation. And this in our study is extensive with respect to the evaluation and the screening. But what I can say is that the people who have participated nationally, most of our people have actually flown in from out of state, although now we have a travel grant program so we can pay people's, at least partially pay their travel costs in. What I can say is the results are appear to be mapping on to those that we got in healthy volunteers. People are having these deeply moving experiences, and it can be completely transformative to their worldview. This sense of this interconnectedness of all people and things is profound, and we've seen some very touching cases where people have had these sessions and been so uplifted by them that they end up going home and giving support to their caretakers. They're the ones who are saying, you know, I'm really sad to be leaving, but it's okay. And at some level, it's okay. And you just have to let me go. And when you hear that from someone who formerly was incredibly anxious and their family was caught up in this grasping for life and the new alternative therapy. And when you hear that kind of reflective transformation about it's okay, it's sad, but it's okay, and at some level, I'm going to be just fine, you know? And it's beautiful, actually.
It is, and it's a tremendous contrast as you were saying that, in my own experience, I'm one of the long-term meditators, and the news of my own cancer diagnosis, and bear in mind, every male member of my family who's gotten colon cancer has not survived. So this is essentially our historical perspective in my clan is, here's your death sentence, have a nice day. And the time that I got this, and bear in mind my brother had passed away 2 years before from this, so it was very fresh in my family's mind. I received this news when coming out of a 10-day retreat with Bhante Gunaratana at Bhavana Society in West Virginia. And so, of course, you come out of a retreat, particularly there, because this is a wonderful place to do retreats. You're in your happy place is kind of a general common way of saying that the mind is very settled. You're very calm. And in particular, having a long meditation practice, this is a very stable place. And so on the way back to the airport, getting the 9 messages on my cell phone when I turned it on, many of them from Hubert Humphrey Cancer Center, from the doctor, saying, oh, you have to come in right away, it's cancer, and jumping up and down, very excited. And just setting off the phone and understanding what this probably meant, and nonetheless taking a very, very nice and pleasant walk in a park across the street from where we were waiting at a gas station on the way back to the airport at the time, and not really having this be a terribly upsetting thing is a much, much nicer way to be able to interact with this kind of news than what I read in a journal that was set out, a very compassionate and wonderful idea, I think, for people at Hubert Humphrey Cancer Center here in Minnesota. They have a little book set out for people to write whatever they want, and they're there for cancer treatments. And I looked through that book, and most of it was from the perspective of the person who had cancer and was struggling with treatments and all the effects therein. And they were not a reaction of, what a lovely park, and let's take a walk. They were reactions of anxiety and stress and physical pain and what we would traditionally speak of as dukkha, as suffering. And that there can be a therapeutic change in one's approach to the same news that people are getting and the same kinds of treatments that people endure is a wonderful opportunity for this area of research. And I encourage you in your work in continuing with that, because not all people will have that long-standing meditation practice that's already in place to help them deal with the stresses of very big life-changing news items like that. So good for you. Please continue.
Yeah. Well, no, thank you for that. And, you know, those in the journal, the journal entries that you described really are reflective of how our culture deals with death and dying. And it's horrendous. And I would wish for the whole culture that we had a culture of meditators, but we don't. And to the extent that psilocybin and meditation are both training in the nature of mind and some of the implications of that, it's, you know, a crash course is better than no course at all.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And you touched on it very well just now. We don't have a culture of meditators. We have a very, at least in the West, a fairly self-absorbed culture. Is one way I would describe it. And having that openness and that interconnectivity and the change that you described with some of the cancer patients of it's going to be okay, and being caregivers for their families and loved ones, that is a place where I would like to see society and culture in general go to concern for others, because that is a place of happiness and calm, not stress and anxiety. Yes.
So if you'll allow me just to mention my
Please, yes.
website to your listeners. So the website for the study, if you know of anyone who might be interested, or you know of anyone who might know of someone who would be interested, the website is www.cancer-insight.org. And from that website, there's a video and there's information about a partial travel grant reimbursement program that we have, and would love to continue to enroll volunteers in this study. So if you know of anyone, please let us know.
Roland, with the study that you just mentioned, there's certain criteria that you're looking for. Tell us about that.
Well, the detailed criteria are, of course, available on the website. But just briefly, volunteers should be between 21 and 70 years old. They should have a cancer diagnosis that's potentially life-threatening, but patients with and without disease progression are eligible. So it's not necessarily just end-stage disease. So if someone has been treated and is having continuing anxiety and it's been over a year since their treatment, they would be eligible for admission. And the one exclusion criteria is that if there's CNS brain involvement, then we're not allowed to enroll people.
Mm-hmm. And that would make sense because that's part of what the study itself is.
Right. Psilocybin works through the CNS, so.